get into what we'll be doing today. So, imagine a world where every forest, river, and grassland is a piece of a giant puzzle. A puzzle that keeps our planet alive and thriving. But what happens if some of these pieces start to disappear? Today, we are diving into a powerful tool that can be used to protect these precious pieces: the geospatial planning. Geospatial planning is like a GPS for conservation, guiding us towards a smarter and more effective ways to protect our natural world. So, students, by the end of today's talk, you should be able to, 1, define remote sensing in GIS. 2, explain with examples the easy-to-use geospatial visualization systems. Lastly, you should be able to describe how GIS and remote sensing is used in agriculture, forestry, and water resource management. So, students and everyone online, please help me in welcoming Dr. Mashiane, our esteemed speaker today. Dr. Mashiane is a dynamic geographer and environmental scientist with vast experience in environmental field. He has worked as an environmental consultant, tackling projects ranging from climate change to ecological risks assessment. His expertise in GIS and remote sensing and biodiversity conservation has taken him across the globe. He has been a guest lecturer in China, imagine. So, Dr. Mashiane, we are very lucky to have you today as our speaker, and we're looking forward and very excited to learn from you. Welcome on stage, Dr. Mashiane.
Thank you, Sela, for that lovely introduction, and good morning to everyone. I hope it's morning where you are, but it's morning here in South Africa. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you. And thank you, Sela, for that lovely introduction. I really appreciate it. My name is Katlego. I'm from South Africa. Basically grew up in Limpopo and then studied in the University of Pretoria as well as the University of the Free State. So today I'm going to speak to you about the spatial data, but also in the context of global change and in the context of biodiversity monitoring and assessment. All right, for the purpose of conservation. So I'd like to introduce my talk by actually introducing two concepts, which is GIS and remote sensing. Most people have to sort of give a distinction between the two. I think it's very important, but also introduce the concept of global change and what do we mean when we speak about global change. So, and the importance of spatial data in that context. So remote sensing is the acquisition of data or about objects on the Earth's surface without being in contact with those particular objects, hence the word remote. But what is sensed here is the energy that is reflected, the energy from the sun that is reflected or emitted from the surface. So we have passive and active sensors. So this acquisition of data is acquired from satellites that are in space, that have, or even in the atmosphere, we can have like your drones that have sensors that can sense this energy and give us a full spectrum. So it's spatial data, but it senses energy which is reflected by objects on the Earth's surface, because different objects reflect and absorb light differently, all right, depending on the color. That's why you normally say that black absorb all rays, and then white reflects, and then all the other colors in between sort of absorb and reflect a certain portion of light. And this light is sensed by these devices. So that is basically the data that we're dealing with here. So in the era of increasing human pressures on the ecosystem and biodiversity, spatial data has emerged as a cornerstone towards addressing conservation goals. So with conservation goals, we're trying to protect species so for the future generations, all right? And the distinction between remote sensing and GIS is that remote sensing is the acquisition of data or the acquisition of data about objects through these devices. And GIS is the computer system which now uses this data to sort of store it, analyze it, and manage it and make meaning out of it. All right. So that is the distinction between the two. But out of the one thing that is common between them is spatial data. What do we mean when we speak of spatial data? We're talking about data that has location in it, whereby you can tell what is happening where. So the operative word there is where, all right? So all of them, they are geographical information system, hence the word geographical, which is synonymous to spatial. So anything that happens on space, it's geographical. So the nice thing about remote sensing is that it's able to integrate different data sets. We are able to integrate, and you'll see as we go on how these different data sets can be incorporated, like your climate data, your vegetation data, your species data. All of these can be incorporated and they can be interrelated. You can measure the relationship between, for example, vegetation and rainfall. And see how does rainfall affect vegetation distribution? How does rainfall affect biomass? So there has been some major advancements in the use of this data set, even though in Africa, we may not be catching up as fast as we should, as far as innovation is concerned. But we are there because of the bilateral agreements that we have with the global north. We are able to access your Google, we're able to access your Google Earth engines. So it's quite interesting, the strides that we're making as Africa, right? So these advancements include a widespread adaptation of easy-to-use geospatial and visualization systems. Those that are familiar with Google Earth and Google Earth Pro know that we are able to visualize different aspects. And if we have time today, I'll show you the visualization aspect. What can we visualize? I'll do some demonstrations as to how far we can go with remote sensing and GIS data, to be specific. And these are some of the exploration tools that you can use to acquire. You have NASA, you have Google, which has your Earth Pro, your Earth Engine, your maps, your Google Earth Collab. We also have Esri ArcGIS. Most of these systems are from the global north. And the key concept here is data, but data that has some spatial element to it. So now we can also source, there are different ways to source this data set, but I think the most important aspect to note is the location of that data. Where are you collecting it? So you can also use like advancements in drones, advancements in hyperspectral. When we speak of hyperspectral, we're speaking about the amount of energy that a sensor can like, or a device can actually record, along the energy that I spoke about when the reflectance and the absorptions of objects. So the more energy can be sensed, the higher we call those hyperspectral, and then the less energy we call them multispectral, right? So now I'll explain Google Earth Engine, which is a cloud-based system. So these advancements are nice because now we are living in the fourth industrial revolution where data and efficiency of utilizing this data has to be paramount. So the cloud-based Google Earth Engine, it provides for cloud-based geospatial and programming interfaces, which provides enhanced opportunities for undertaking Earth observation studies. So what does that mean? It means that you can do programming, you can talk to the data, communicate, use programming languages to communicate with the data online without having a computer, or you can even do it a visualization on your phone. So there are those programming languages such as JavaScript. You have Google Earth Engine, which provide access to satellites, and these cloud-based tools have ample amounts of data, like archives of data that uh, starts from 40 years ago with satellite imagery, meaning that you can view what was happening back then, and I'll show you even later how this works. And the imageries are pre-processed. I'll even show you how the pre-processing works before the analysis to remove cloud noise, and to just have or you can even use the original what do you call this, imagery. And another thing is that you can even get ready to use computed products such as EVIs and NDVIs. They are there. I like that the platform that I'll demonstrate later what we mean when we say pre-calculated, or pre-analyzed. So meaning that you don't have to do the analysis, the data analysis yourself. Platforms such as these come with that data that is already analyzed. And I think that's the future, just to make this kind of technology accessible to almost everyone, where as Africans we can have these systems ourselves, which are making data accessible and information accessible. So these are the advantages of a cloud-based, or the benefits of cloud-based geospatial computation. You don't need a computer, you don't need to download data. You can just run through the entire process online. This is another example of ArcGIS. As you can see here, it shows different satellites, and it shows you fire activities in Southern Africa. And these are the applications I wanted to discuss there. How do we use this data for conservation? How do we use it for agriculture? How do we use it for forestry? In agriculture, we can use this technology because it's an overview of the world in different shapes and colors. So we are able to get the intensity of, we are able to even of light that is reflected by different crops or emitted. And so you can even do those pre-calculated measurements that I've already spoke about, where you can get soil moisture and get salinity about the soil. But now you can also identify the crops, like, if you have a farm, you can be able to differentiate through land classification and land stratification, and just get land covers and what is this land used for, what is this land also utilized for. So you can do like crop type classification to measure whether is this a maize farm, is this a potato farm, is this, you can make those stratas. And you can also assess the conditions of the crop, meaning that you can measure the amount of water in the crop. You can, like crop stress, diseases from there. You can, because obviously the affected crops by which are not well fertilized, those that are not, what do you call this? Those that don't have enough water will reflect differently because they are stressed. So the amount of energy that gets sensed by these devices will be different. And also something which we call precision crop monitoring. This just means that you're precise in the measurements that you have. And you'll see later when we speak about conservation in the next coming slides, how this data works, right? So now we're speaking about big data analytics, meaning that each crop will have its own sensor that can sense the amount of water, the amount of fertilizers in the soil. So basically, it said that sensor can detect when the soil water levels are dropping and sends information to a computer, and then there will be an algorithm that receives that data and do calculations. So it's sort of an automated crop system, right? Crop monitoring system, which is very nice because you can even use it for disaster management, early warning systems and stuff. So in forestry, it's almost similar to how we use it in agriculture, where we do cloud-based computations, where you do spatial models. Spatial models, we just meaning that you're able to predict the distribution of species, where are they gonna go, where are they most likely to survive. Spatial modeling also is good for projecting climate change impact, okay? Because here we're talking about global change, biology, which is now how does human influence the natural world through, for example, any global issue or any environmental issue that is related to human influence it's part of the global change. Your deforestation, I saw in your quiz you were speaking about deforestation and climate change or pollution. So you are able to take all those environmental disturbances into account when you do species modeling to see how will climate change affect species distribution, how will species survive in the future through using mathematical models and machine learning to sort of make those projections and predictions. All right. So it's like I said, in forestry, we use remote sensing and GIS in the most similar way to address global change issues, like identifying species, checking wildfires. You saw recently in America, they had a devastating wildfires that completely had a huge spatial damage. So we are able to also look at how will fires uh, affect forest, or how will forest affect the occurrence of fires. You see, so we're able to make that prediction, and we're able to come up with policies that can prevent that kind of natural disaster from happening if you have this kind of data and you have proper models. So basically, all of this is to inform policy and to improve decision making. All right, which is very very important and paramount rather. Okay, this is what I think we've been waiting for. How do we use remote sensing for wildlife management? How do we use it to monitor elephants? And I think I'll just touch on this a little bit when perhaps go into details. So what is happening here is that we are able to use this data, this data that is collected either from drones or satellites. This one picture is collected from what do you call this, from a satellite, from a high resolution satellite, meaning that this satellite has finer details of both spatial and spectral details, meaning we can see the finest details of what is actually happening on the ground. So basically those squares that you see, those are the elephants that were detected. So this is something which we call object detection. It's not necessarily a prediction, but it's just training your imagery to identify certain what do you call this? Certain data sets. All right. So remote sensing and animal movement data sets are becoming very vital for conservation. This offers insights into species behavior and environmental changes, right? So basically we can tell where do these animals move. So basically here on that image, you can see the elephants in those squares that the system has managed to identify, because now you have built a training models, you have told the image, or you're told the computer that anything that looks like this is an elephant. So you're able to do elephant count from space or from a drone image, which I think is very much a cost-effective way of doing animal counts. And with environmental changes, I'll show you in the next coming slides how do you now use this animal count to sort of measure or calculate or predict the influence that the environment will have on the distribution of elephants. So this is a very good start to just identify where are the elephants right now and why are they there. So that's why now you just do using environmental changes. So essentially, while data and access to data are becoming cheaper and more manageable, there is limited analytical expertise that sort of restricts their broader use. And I think this is a case for us in South Africa or in Africa, because we don't have enough resources to sort of broaden this data set that we have forward. So we often rely on like international grants and agencies, which are very, very instrumental to research and development. So so I just want to show you the influence of remote sensing in the context of global change and wildlife management. So observing the changing status of the planet is key to understand and predict animal distribution. So with increased habitat loss that we are seeing, invasive species, climate change, exploitation, we must understand how these changes affect species. I think I've already alluded to this. How do elephants sort of affect the environment, and how does the environment affect the distribution of elephants? So this data can be very, very intrinsic or instrumental in understanding those relationships, particularly when it comes to climate change and invasive species, all right? So I think I've already explained what is happening in that image. A machine was trained, or a machine algorithm was trained to identify elephants on an image. Yeah. So this image or this figure here shows the distribution of animals. The first, the top left on my end is the location data that was plotted in R. R is a software, or is a programming language that is desktop based. And also it's available on the cloud as well. So it's for statistical and data analytics. So basically it was plotted. So these animals were tracked, and then the movement of this animal was also traced to see where are they. The first image there at A, it shows you the location, and then when you go to B, you can see that this data is now superimposed on a real global satellite image, because you can even see a little bit of other of Google Earth image, right? So you can see vegetation, you can already just see the patterns and how the animal paths, you can see the patterns and what is their range and how do they migrate, where do they move to. I think that is essentially a very good start to just see the trends. How far do they go? Where do they not go? And why they use certain paths? And then number C shows the range, like how much territory do they occupy. And then it also shows a model estimation of like their range and their home range, basically, how much space have they occupied and where are they most concentrated. And now when you take this data of range, and then you superimpose it on an image, which is on D, you can be able to see that, for example, at number D, it shows you vegetation health. So the green parts will show you the areas which have the most, I can say, luscious vegetation, which is greener, and then the brown part will show you the areas which are sort of bare land and don't have much vegetation for foraging. So you can tell that actually animals move according to forage, but that is not only reason why animals move around. There can be a lot of factors like terrain, a lot of factors like climate. So when you superimpose this information on an image, you are able to observe those trends and observe the influence of animal movements. All right. And this is another example of the changing temperatures over Southern Africa. And these are the projections for the period of like comparisons between 2070 and 2000. Okay, so those are the comparison of the temperatures, and it shows that we are going to see increases in the future in the temperature availability, and we are going to the temperature measurements and also even rainfall over Southern Africa. These images are also projections of the future, and also the retrospective view of what was the temperature like. So you are able to see temperature fluctuations over a period of time. I want to touch a little bit on why is it important for us to observe this information. And I think I have already emphasized a lot in terms of the use of remote sensing, the applications, particularly in conservation and forestry. But it's important that you capture the critical information whenever you're doing monitoring, all right? So we have something which we call in situ monitoring and remote sensing monitoring. Remote sensing monitoring is using the devices like I've already mentioned. In situ is ground-based monitoring, where you do actual measurements on the ground. And these measurements should incorporate the following. You should have genetic composition of your data set. You should have population about species, like counting how many species. You should have species traits, meaning the characteristics, the condition. You should also have composition or community composition, not particularly at species level, and you should also have ecosystem structure and functions. All right. So these are what we call essential biodiversity variables that are good for monitoring global change. And these are like they come from the international treaties that all the countries have agreed to. So here's another example of how remote sensing data can be used. This is also another indication of the level of vegetation and how this relates to rainfall, for example. If you look at the graph on the side, you can already see those fluctuations that I was talking about. For example, the rainfall is in those bar graph, which shows that in the beginning months of the year, you can already see that both rainfall and this gray line, which shows vegetation, they go up. But as soon as, which is the summer months in South Africa, but as soon as the rainfall goes down, so does the vegetation, which shows you the importance of rainfall in the ecosystem. But also it shows you the seasonality and the changes. How does seasons affect phenology? And it just shows you those indicators in terms of what are we supposed to be measuring about how can we use those calculations from remote sensing data sets to sort of have a standardized way of measuring this information. This is another example of vegetation conditions as well. So yeah, this sort of marks the end of my talk, but I'll just want to highlight the following issues to show that the recent advances in spatial data have sparked interest beyond traditional research boundaries or academic boundaries. So there's a huge interest to explore this technology in the context of like using technological advancements in GIS and remote sensing. South African parks are already doing it. I know there are some works also in Botswana, but just because we understand the main reason why we have interest in this technology is because we are able to get a huge large amounts of data, information in a short space of time, and we are realizing that most of our problems have location element in them, so they are spatial in nature. So I think I believe that is why we have such interest, like your climate change, your deforestation, your elephants encroaching into human spaces and stuff. So we are able to track those locations, and we're able to trace because of the positive outcomes that we will get. So I think it's important that because of this information is going to become unprecedented and we might be inundated with the information, we need to now unlock the power of GIS and sort of have management tools. So yeah, I think that is what I want to say, that we have the data at our fingertips. Let's make use of it and let's mitigate the impacts of global change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mashiane. It's quite very interesting to see how technology is making our life very easy, how we can use technology to solve some of the problems that we have in conservation, how we can use it to conserve biodiversity. Thank you so much. Right now it's time for questions. So if you have your questions, you can raise your virtual hand, and also for the student, you can just let Dr. Richard know, and he will let me know. Then we'll give you a chance to ask a question. Any questions? Those online, you can raise your virtual hand and you'll be given.
Okay, I'll try to give an icebreaker question for my class. You may have not explicitly stated it, but is artificial intelligence integrated in your applications? Could you maybe emphasize that and how important or how useful it is?
All right, thank you. I think artificial intelligence is the new word or the new thing that we're discussing, even though it has been there for quite some time. And in South Africa, we have made some extensive deliberations about it, but the implementation part is the only one which is still sort of missing. But to answer your question is that artificial intelligence is definitely integrated. So artificial intelligence, we simply talking about machines being able to do what human beings are able to do. So machines are just as intelligent as we are. So we train the machine to be able to do what human beings can do. So in conservation, we are training the machine to identify species, to recognize which species is this. And we already have camera traps that have artificial intelligence that are able to identify even in a 24/7. Like if you have a camera trap that is installed in the field, you are able to take a picture and it's able to send that signal to your phone to say, oh, an elephant has been detected, and give you all that information. So we're getting this big data, this influx of data in that way. So I think very much part of the work that we do, artificial intelligence and machine learning is able to give us data, and it's able to give us accurate assessments as well of information. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richard, for the question and Dr. Mashiane for the answer. Before we go to the next question, maybe can I ask Dr. Mashiane if it's possible to demonstrate the technology to us, like how you do it?
All right. So this is something we should call NASA's Earth Explorer, where you can where you are leveraging this power of satellites and information from space. And this is something which we have let me just come here and come to my co-location. This is what I was telling you about visualization and having ready to use systems that where you can do some visualization. Hopefully, even if you have location data, you're able to superimpose it. So when I tell it to use my current location, it immediately takes me to where I am. But I'm going to use the case of Botswana as an example, and then you see now just say map labels. I click here, and then it will show me where is Botswana, and yeah. And for example, we are able to make those assessments. You can even see from space. So this is a platform that I already mentioned, that we are able to use this data to to visualize the technology that I was referring to about. For example, when you click here, or when you put your cursor here, you can see there it shows you the natural color, which shows you the absorption of the red band, the green band, and the blue band, and it shows you how the surface reflectance is. It's also something which is called land surface temperature, which is very brilliant for it's a pre-calculated product where you can see the temperature on the surface. It's also good if you want to see whether animals move according to the temperature, and see those sort of data. And this is calculated, the Lancet surface temperature. You can see it's also it's a calculated measure, right? So there was something which I just wanted to demonstrate. I think my computer is a little bit, because I'm connecting from my device, from my laptop. So I just wanted to show you guys how this technology, like when I spoke about pre-processing, like say for example, you're trying to observe this data, we're trying to observe which information about your area, which is in Botswana. I think I need to go to the Okavango, which is here. Somebody said the Okavango is the runoff of Angola. So basically, I should be able to find it. You see, you are able to observe this from space, you see. And let me see if I can't minimize this. I wanted to see, but I can't, which is fine. I'll just show you the surface temperature of the Okavango. You can also see the agricultural map, but I also wanted to show you the changes that happen here over time, right? So, for example, if you know the climate of your area, you are able to know which months are the rainfall months in order to observe like the changes over time. So this is something which you can use. You can add these like I said, these satellites have data sets and archives of large amounts of data that span over time, right? So you are able to go even up to all of these years to start the observation from, you see, from even the 80s, you see. So here you can even start in 1990 to see how many images do we have of this area from then. And then you're able to see that, oh, okay, we have this one image in November, and then it shows you the 0% that cloudy, meaning that the image that is free from all the noise and stuff. And then you see it's showing you the nice image of the Okavango there. And then you move to add another scene. This is what I mean, that this is the kind of technology that we need in South Africa to visualize, or in Africa to say, I mean. And then 1990, you also move forward, maybe 5 years later, in 95. And then you check in 95, do we have any data set in 95? So you can even already see that even in 1 month, you can have one image, because not every satellite image was going to be viable for you. Like, for example, in the month of November, you can see there's absolutely nothing. is because of the cloud cover, you know. Summer months are also very prone to cloud cover, meaning that you are not able to observe with high accuracy the surface of the earth, all right? And then you also go ahead and then you add, you go on and say 2000, 2000, and you see on 2000 there's another image there. You select it. So you can add as many as you can. Let's try 2005 and then 2010, up to 2010, and then this is just an advanced tool that is now made it easy to visualize the remote sensing data. But in academia, we need figures, you know, obviously, because if you write a research article, you're not gonna do these demonstrations. You have to present the actual data that is reflected on the surface. All right, so let's see. And then, okay, the last one, let me do 2010, which is the last one. So let me just do 2010. 10, 10 October. And then you just play. So you see, it's showing you the changes in the deltas, vegetation and water resources there. So because already it's a wetland, you can tell that at times, like you can even do an annual, like in 1 year, how does the delta change in size, in shape? Obviously, because I use the same time period, which is November, which is October and December, there won't be a much shift. But I'm just trying to show you that you can visualize this over time. So this is a system that made it easy to use and visualize data from remote sensing satellite. And you can also even download it here. I believe that this should be available. You can download it here. You can take pictures and then you can share it with your peers. Even I normally tell my students to post it on WhatsApp and show them the cool stuff that they do in class. But yeah, this is the something which I wanted to share with you guys and demonstrate the visualization of this data set, and how. So if you superimpose this, you can even tell how does an animal move over time. So it's like a temporal, spatio-temporal view. All right. Yeah. So that's about it. I hope that you enjoyed that demonstration. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That was very fascinating. It's very fascinating how we can see the things from 1990 up to now. That's very interesting. Yeah. Thank you so much for the demonstration. Yeah. We can continue with the questions. And I see Dr. Richard has a hands up. Go for it, Doctor.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few questions that I think will help my class. One is that, like Dr. Mashiane mentioned, in science, for you to say this is different, place A is different from place B in terms of temperature or in terms of vegetation. They are usually numbers. So how do you convert the images to numbers? And then the second one is that Google Earth is free. Is Landsat free? So are they able to go to Landsat website and explore these things? And then the third one, this one is for me. We struggle with, centralizing information such that our land planners can easily access it Yeah, we have such a challenge in Botswana. We don't have a centralized database for conservation species, you know, environmental information. So how is this information, where is this information stored? Is it, when you say cloud, is it in a particular country for Botswana, or where is the cloud? I just want to understand. Thank you.
Dr. Mashiane, you're muted.
Oh, okay. I was saying, can I answer?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very
Before you
much.
answer, before you answer, Dr. Mashiane, I just want to add something that I think you left out, that, you know, when you said remote sensing, you gave the impression that we rely on natural emissions of signals, reflections on, but I think we also do install things that help remote sensing, like collars, such that you can access movement of, for example, elephants from your computer. And therefore you can actually map their migration maps and, you know, integrate that in your spatial planning. Thanks. I just wanted to contribute that point, which I think is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. I completely agree that remote sensing cannot survive without the availability of in situ data for calibration and validation. And also those two work hand in hand in order to understand relationships. So yeah. Thank you, Doc. For your student, I think the question was related to data. How do we access this data, and how do we sort of present it? So this is sort of an easy to use platform, but it also has, like, I mean, there are various platforms to assess for data analysis and data assessment. Some of them are commercial, some of them are free. And now, even now, you can access Landsat data for free, which means like Landsat imagery. And whatever that I'm doing here, you are able to calculate it yourself, and freely available, what do you call this, softwares. So it's just a matter of getting Landsat data, and also, you know, so this platform was compiled by Esri in conjunction with NASA, and they I think Esri, because it's a commercial company, for students this platform can be, but there are so many platforms for such observation and to do such animations. This is just mainly playing around with data, and if you have a nice presentation, if you're presenting at a conference, you're able to tell that story, you know. And also this platform also shows you where to, like, if you click here, you are able to detect whether you've clicked in a healthy vegetation, and you're able to see the absorption and the reflection of that light here. And you're able to measure how healthy the vegetation is, depending on the amount of light that is absorbed in these regions and reflected in these regions. So this is something which you can sort of present if you have like a presentation. Like, for example, you can tell how healthy is vegetation along the paths of the Okobongo, or along the tributary, or along the wetland. So you're able to check that during this time period, we didn't have enough reflectors, we didn't have enough, I mean, absorption, meaning that the vegetation was quite dry. So, but I'm saying that all of these computations or these calculations are pre-calculated, but you are able to do these calculations yourself by making sure that you retrieve all of these bands, like I've indicated here, your infrared, your blue, and then you put them together for this type of view. And also, yeah. So I hope that answers your first and second question. There are a lot of data that is out there, just that some of the data depends on the application, and also depends on the resolution and the quality of the data that you're using. But most of the data is quite good for a number of applications. The issue of centralizing information, yes, I mean, we're living in an era where data drives everything, and data is the new currency. So data sharing, it becomes a little bit of a challenge. So it's therefore very important to invest in tools that can collect data for you, and you're able to publish, or you're able to make a difference in your own world. But we need systems that can store the data, that can also manage this data, like what the Global North is doing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Katlego, Dr. Mashiane, for the answers. Before we started the demonstration, I saw Dr. Kirsten Neke had her hand up, and now, yeah, I can see she has also raised. Can you go for it?
Thanks, Zilla, and thank you, Katlego. I've really enjoyed your talk. Yeah, really super. I spent many days, but it was months and months on my knees in the Savannah woodlands, measuring the Savannah woodland forests, or the Savannah woodlands, and yeah, really individually measuring each tree, and looking at species diversity, etc., community ecology. And I just learned yesterday from a fellow scientist that now one can use remote sensing together with AI, that basically the AI gets trained in being able to identify particular species of plants, and even to be able to look at what the dimensions of those plants are from an aerial perspective. And yeah, I can imagine just being able to have had that when I was doing my PhD, and not to be on my knees, but to be getting an aerial perspective, and apparently it has like a 95% accuracy, which is absolutely amazing. Yeah, Katlego, I just wanted to ask you another question on the elephant side. I understand that Botswana has a huge human-elephant conflict challenge. And I just wanted to ask you whether GIS can assist us in conservation planning and management to lessen this conflict. Whether one can use spatial elements such as available habitats, or the carrying capacity of that habitat for elephants, the proximity to agricultural land, or to villages and homesteads and roads and schools, etc. So I'd just be interested to have a little bit more detail on that question.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Kristen. I also spend a week in Mapungubwe doing tree monitoring there, looking at the tree conditions, and I can see even the picture on your background. There's something which we used to call diebacks, and that's the tree just not surviving the impacts of the elephant, and this is simply because the population of the elephant is increasing, and the carrying capacity is just not enough to can handle that. And also, I believe that climate change has something to do with this as well, whereby certain territories are now becoming unfavorable, therefore moving the animals into in human-occupied space. But one thing I realized also when I was in Mapungubwe is, I mean, apart from the destruction, is that there's that understanding of like how humans are now integrated into the system, and they are now part of the system. They're able to live together with the animal species. I don't know how, but I think there's that indigenous element to it. But with GIS and remote sensing, we're able to have an aerial overview of environmental conditions on the ground, particularly the amount of species, but I mean, particularly the amount of vegetation, the land surface temperature, the water availability, and we're able to track how does that, what are the relationship between the animal species as well as the vegetation as well. So we're able to establish those relationships and maybe perhaps do something which we call spatial distribution maps, or predict where are these elephants are most likely to migrate to. But I also want to emphasize the importance of ground data. Well, like what Dr. Richard has already mentioned, the importance of having in situ data, the importance of like measurements, so that they can work in conjunction with the remote sensing data. So I think we can be able to work around that to just observe. But the most challenging thing is the population in the populations of elephants in the savannah that contributes to the destruction of tree species, and also encroach human territory. So I think that is another challenge that we can try to assess and come up with policies.
Thank you, Katlego.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kirsten, for the nice question. And thank you, Dr. Mashiane. And yeah, I can see Dr. Richard, you had your hand up. Go for it.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on that point that remote sensing is very useful. I'm just from a symposium and learned that in the upper Panhandle, upstream of the Okavango Delta, through remote sensing data, they've been able to identify elephant migration paths because they have to access water at the delta. And that informs, well, together with other indices, they've been able to identify, to rank the land in terms of from high risk to low risk, including those elephant paths. And they are working with the land authorities. They give them those maps. And I think it would be difficult without remote sensing data to do such planning. So I just wanted to add that the GIS or remote sensing is very useful to reduce such problems, especially in the face of changing climates, where the water resources are getting scarce, or resources in general. Yeah, now I've even forgotten the other question that I had. So I'll ask it if I remember it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richard, for the comments. Yeah, and yeah, keep on. We hope you remember the question, because we're looking forward to hearing it. Any other questions from our students?
Okay, so I've remembered it. So at the start of my module, I explained to my students how scientists study patterns at a global scale, because this is global change biology. We want to see patterns at a larger scale than a local scale. And I remember one of the things I highlighted is things like metadata analysis, collaboration between scientists. For example, the Tundra experiment, where scientists in different parts of the world use standardized methods to study a certain biome, and therefore the conclusions are relevant to such a biome anyway. But what I realized that I didn't touch on is remote sensing. And I want to apologize to my students that Dr. Mashiane has just shown that I've left a very important approach I've left out a very important approach that is used to extract patterns at a regional and global scale, which is through using remote sensing. And I think we used examples of such data, but without myself explicitly stating that this is through a remotely measured data. So thank you for your lecture. We really appreciate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richard. And thank you so much, Dr. Mashiane, for covering remote sensing. As we have come to an end of our talk today, I would like to thank the students for their engagement and for being very fast and defeating Sarah. And thank you, Dr. Richard Mazabedi, for initiating the talk. And thank you, our online audience, for joining the classroom. And also a special thank you to our speaker, Dr. Mashiane. Thank you so much. We have learned a lot from you.
Thank you, guys.
And
Opportunity,
you're welcome, Dr. Mashiane. Have a good day, everyone.